Astragalus, Astragalus membranaceus. Oh, what an herb. Seriously, this herb is amazing. And I was just refreshing and going through my notes. And I was like, you know what, I need to bring a paper with me because there's just so much benefit that this plant can bring to us. It really is impressive. So it's a plant that's in the legume family. It's the root that we work with, and it's really beneficial for all ages and all health states. I mean, it really, especially debilitated health states, it's a real restorative. It's an herb that just builds and strengthens and supports health, but in a really gentle way. And it actually tastes really good. It's very sweet, and it's an adaptogen. So it's an herb that can be taken in a variety of ways. Nourishing infusion, I find, is the easiest way. But you can also decoct it since it's a root. People work with the tincture of it, and that's fine too. And then also just including it in food, like you can buy, big tongue depressor like sizes. Well, those are harder to find more and more these days, I find. But, bigger chunks of the root, slices of the root that you can put in your rice pot or your bone broth pot, or even in soup. You just want to pull it out at the end because it is quite woody, and not necessarily the root itself isn't edible, but you can infuse it into your food or your beverages. So I like to make a nourishing herbal infusion with it. This is what 1 ounce, this is a cut and sifted root. This is what 1 ounce looks like. It's a pretty small amount compared to our leaves and flowers for sure. It, depending on, I find that there's a lot of variation in astragalus root from batch to batch, distributor to distributor. The different style of cut and sift that some roots have. Some it looks more shaved and stringy, others are chunkier. I've even gotten some that looked like they were the tongue depressor size root, but it was actually just compressed, kind of shaved root. So, but it's all good. If you can find North American grown astragalus root, that's even better. A lot of the astragalus root still comes from China, and the farming practices there are somewhat questionable. But that we just work with what we have, really. So non-toxic food, like infuse it into food. You can also get astragalus powder, and I like to add that to my smoothies, as well as I like to add it to the snack nuggets or snack balls where you make nut butters and powdered herbs and dried fruit, or granola bars, granola. It's just very mild in flavor, pretty sweet, and really easy to add into any type of food. Lots and lots of benefit. So it's, I think it's best known as an immune supportive herb. Just really building the immune system in a variety of ways, which we'll get into. But also it's generally antioxidant. It's a wonderful liver protector herb, very restorative. It is an adaptogen, so like the schizandra berry, it really is non-toxic, non-specific in action, and very modulating, and helps to bring the body closer to homeostasis, really helps us deal with stress and makes us more resilient and flexible in stressful situations, whether it's physically stressful or emotionally stressful. So also supportive of the spleen, and which ties in with its immune system support. And it's actually also antibacterial and antiviral. So it's anti-infective against the staph infections, as well as salmonella and other infections as well. It is also really known to fight the first onset of an infection of Lyme specifically. So if you live in an area where there's a lot of ticks or a lot of Lyme disease, or the co-infections, then Astragalus is really nice to incorporate on a regular basis during the season that the ticks are out, or seasons, I should say. I think the only season they're not out is the dead of winter, is what I've come to realize. And then sometimes the Astragalus can be beneficial for people who are dealing with chronic Lyme, but sometimes it is not helpful and maybe even is counterproductive for people dealing with chronic Lyme. But that's really person specific and how your own immune system is dealing with the chronic situation. It's a tonic herb. So during this course, I've been kind of talking about the different categories of herbs and how I feel like adaptogen and tonic are kind of this amorphous type categories of herbs that kind of can often coincide and can be nourishing or can end up to be tonic herbs anyway. Might be leaning more toward sedative and stimulating herbs, but really they're just more supportive. So they're kind of in between the nourishment and the stimulating and sedating. Tonic herbs, I think of a tonic as an herb that just strengthens and supports a specific organ system. And it's almost like jogging or muscle or weightlifting is a tonic for your muscles. So then Astragalus would be a tonic for your immune system. And doing it just one time is not going to do much for you, but doing it in a pattern over a long period of time is really going to help you. So where if you are trying to build your muscles, you can't just weight lift once and expect anything to happen. But if you weight lift once or twice a week for months on end, then you're really going to see some benefit, and the benefit accumulates and builds. And that's kind of similar with the tonic herbs, in that you can't just do it once and expect anything to happen. You don't want to do it every day all the time, because that might wear out whatever you're trying to strengthen. But in some sort of a repetitive pattern is how they work best. So tonic, so Astragalus just happens to be a tonic herb for a lot of different organs or organ systems. One is the heart tonic, it's a lung tonic, it's a digestive tonic, it's known as a kidney tonic, a liver tonic, a spleen tonic, an immune system tonic. It just really offers a lot of support of a lot of different systems of the body. It also is diuretic, which ties in with its effects on the kidney, and it is antiperspirant, which is random, but if you have excessive perspiration, it might be one to try out. And it's a rejuvenative. So if you are coming out of some sort of illness or debilitated state, it can be really, really beneficial. I'm going to take a sip of it because I'm feeling a little rough. I've been talking a lot today. And it feels so nourishing. It is so sweet. You can taste the sugars. It's slightly rooty. It has like a little bit of an earthy flavor undertone, but it's really enjoyable and kids love it. I love to put it in smoothies too, as like the juice of a smoothie. It works really well. Ways that it supports our immune system. It increases macrophage activity, which is a type of immune cell. It also increases the stem cells in the bone marrow and lymph tissue. And not only does it increase them, but it also triggers their maturation into immune cells. So it builds the number of immune cells that we have that are able to fight. I said it was an immune tonic, so overall strengthener, tonifier of the system or systems as a whole. I mean, our herbalists, we talk about the immune system, but really it's like so much more than just one system, right? It's not, you can't like put your finger on the immune system. There's so many nuts and bolts and pieces. And astragalus really affects a lot of those nuts and bolts and pieces. So it also increases phagocytosis, which I think is like the eating, where the immune cells come along and eat things that our body doesn't really need, or it might be infectious or pathogenic. It increases spleen activity and immune cell release from the spleen. It helps healthy cells to resist viral invasion. So during the cold and flu season, it's just a nice herb to always be incorporating and to have on hand, especially for kids who are in school, and for parents who are exposed to whatever their kids pick up. But kids tend to get a lot more stuff because hopefully we've already gotten a lot of what, and they're still building up their immune responses. Also increases healthy cell regeneration and is really beneficial for people who have allergies or are in the flux of cold and flu season. Even if you have a cold or a flu, it can be helpful. People that are dealing with cancer and even people that are dealing with HIV. Now there is this kind of what's generally talked about, I feel like astragalus in modern American herbalism is, it's a lot of times it's said that you don't want to take astragalus when you're in the midst of a cold or a flu because based on Chinese theory, it creates an energetic shield around the body that will hold the virus or bacteria in the body and not allow it to be released and be gotten rid of. And so there's this big talk, I feel like, in modern day herbalism, a lot of herbalists and well-known herbalists talk about it this way, that you don't want to, and almost like, no, you definitely never want to have astragalus during a cold or a flu. And this confused me because also a lot of the research that I have done says, oh, well, it's actually quite antiviral and antibacterial, and it does enhance your functioning of the immune system. And I was like, well, that doesn't really make that much sense to me. And an energetic shield, I don't know, maybe I'm just too practical or scientific. Also, I think a lot gets lost in translation. Like I haven't talked specifically to a Chinese doctor or herbalist about it. I usually just hear it from American herbalists who have heard it from other American herbalists who maybe at one point someone heard it from a Chinese herbalist. And so I would want to dig a little deeper into that. I haven't really been able to unearth it too much, but I know that a lot gets lost in translation between Chinese medicine and modern day American herbalism, just with how the body is viewed and described and talked about. It's very, very different paradigms. So I think it's kind of hard, and I think a lot of does get lost in translation. So I personally am not afraid to take astragalus if I am actually fighting a cold or a flu. But that's me personally, and I know other herbalists have different takes on that. But I would say, there might be more anti-infectious herbs out there that are stronger than astragalus, and where astragalus you can kind of take all the time without any problems. But I think they also, it's not like you also have to worry about it in autoimmune conditions either. That's totally fine and can be really helpful, especially if the autoimmune condition is debilitating. Now it's also so beneficial in cancer therapy and in conjunction with traditional or conventional cancer therapies. And I had to take some notes because there's so many different ways that it helps with that. So one way is that it enhances the natural killer cell activity, which fight cancer and viral infected cells via apoptosis. So basically sends a message, a self-destruct message to a cell that is mutated or is infected with viral genetics, where the virus is using it to replicate its genetics and spread itself. So apoptosis is kind of like the self-destruct button, or I just love saying that word, apoptosis. So it enhances that ability. It's also known to reduce tumor cells and inhibit tumor growth, which I think is interesting because that's similar to the red clover that we talked about, and they're both in the legume family, the pea and bean family, which I don't know if that has any relationship to that at all, but I just find that interesting. It's also, there was a study done that it was shown to prevent metastasis, which is basically the cancer spreading from one where it originally started to other parts of the body. It was able to prevent that in 80% of mice in this one study that was done. So that would be interesting to look further into if you are dancing with cancer. It also has been shown to restore immune function to cancer patients whose immune function has been wiped out, whether it's been from chemotherapy or other therapies or from the cancer itself. Also has been shown to protect the liver. As we know, it's a liver tonic and a liver restorative and protective, similar to the Schizandra, which is the other adaptogen that we have talked about, from a variety of medications that challenge the liver, including chemotherapy and radiation. And I have heard that in China, that it's very important that people work with adaptogens while they're working with cancer therapy, and that it's really seen as a total disservice to not include adaptogens along with when we're doing chemotherapy and radiation or radiation. The Astragalus specifically is also shown to reduce side effects from chemo and radiation, and also to enhance the beneficial effects of the chemotherapy and radiation. So not only does it help protect the body from the negative aspects of it, but it also does help the functioning of the chemotherapy and radiation. So for me, I know that if or when I have to deal with chemotherapy or radiation, either for myself or loved ones, the Astragalus, as well as mushrooms and other herbs, all nourishing herbal infusions really, but definitely Astragalus and mushrooms are going to be on the top of my list. And one thing that the Astragalus and the mushrooms both have in similarity, as well as seaweed and a lot of other plants, are these polysaccharides. And it's not the mucilaginous polysaccharides like in the linden and the comfrey, but just polysaccharides in general, which are these long-chain sugars, which can really kind of awaken and enliven and support immune function. And the way that I was taught that it can do this is really interesting, in that pathogens tend to, like bacteria, carry their backpack with them that's full of their food so that they can be stronger. You know, they don't just travel without a food supply, they actually carry polysaccharides with them as like a little backpack storage food supply. And different bacteria can be identified by the type of polysaccharide that they carry with them. We can identify them that way. But our immune system and our immune cells actually also identify pathogenic bacteria by these polysaccharides as well. So they're actually kind of like a little trigger for the immune system, and to kind of wake up and pay attention. So the way I was taught is that when we ingest herbs that are high in polysaccharides, like the Astragalus, which you can taste, it just even tastes really sweet, then those are going to be cycling through our blood and our system, and our immune cells are going to kind of be like, oh, whoa, there's polysaccharides around, let's hep, like, let's wake up, let's make the rounds, let's see what this is all about, what are these from, or is this something we have to worry about? And so they'll notice them, they'll be like, oh, no, there's nothing attached to them, it's fine, whatever. But while I'm awake and making the rounds, I might as well check around for any sort of cancer or other pathogens that might be around. So for an immune system that might be weak or needs a little enticing, ingesting things with polysaccharides can be really helpful, but not too stimulating or overly stimulating. Because again, this is not a stimulant herb, it's not an immune stimulant, it's an immune tonic and supporter. And then I also had a list of a few other things that Astragalus, imagine that. There's even more that astragalus can do. So not only does it enhance energy and vitality, but so it's really beneficial for people who are chronic fatigue syndrome or dealing with fibromyalgia. It can really increase appetite. So again, that's really helpful for people going through chemotherapy or general debilitated states, people who are at the end of their life, and it just can be really helpful nourishment and food and enhancement. It can cool a fever, which is another reason why I'm like, oh, well, maybe it would be, I don't see what's the problem necessarily in taking it if that's what you have available to you and you have a cold or a flu. Also increases cardiac blood flow. It can strengthen tendons, bones, and muscles. And it increases athletic performance and endurance, which again is a classic adaptogen herb trait or quality. It's kind of what the scientists, when they were originally looking for herbs that they would consider to be adaptogenic, they were looking for herbs that specifically enhanced endurance and athletic performance. And it increases cardiac function, especially after or during, after an experience of congestive heart failure. It can actually really help to support the heart after that and help it to recover. And then also improve kidney function, even in chronic kidney disease. So really, I mean, how can you go wrong with astragalus? I just don't know. I don't think you can. Plus it tastes good on top of all of that. So get yourself some astragalus root and incorporate it into your nourishing self-care ritual. Cheers. And it's truly chuggable.